Thanks for joining me for the Falkland Islands War, a brief analysis, available on Amazon Kindle. This short conflict provided valuable lessons learned for military logisticians, strategic planners, and students of leadership worldwide. The British forces executed a brilliant reclamation campaign against the Argentinians despite the disadvantage of being more than 8,000 miles, or 6,700 nautical miles from the United Kingdom. The British demonstrated that training, tactics, and strategy are often more important than raw military might and home field advantage. This campaign is a model case study for the difficulties of the projection of power, and it reinforced the importance of maintaining air superiority at all costs. In addition to evaluating leadership, I'll examine some of the tactical battles and technologies introduced in this conflict, such as the Harrier VTOL jump jet and the Exocet anti-ship missile. These were emerging new technologies in the 1980s. For this segment, I'll cover two chapters out of my book. We'll start with an overview of the invasion and then get into the British Operation Corporate. Early on April 2, 1982, Argentine forces conducted an amphibious assault on the East Falkland Islands main settlement of Port Stanley. Within hours, the Argentine forces completely overwhelmed the small garrison of Royal Marines assigned to the only significant populated town in the Falklands. The British governor, Sir Rex Hunt, surrendered Port Stanley to Argentina's military forces within a few days, which signaled the Argentines' commitment to their reclamation goals. I think it's very relevant to get into the context of the invasion and the road to war of Argentina before this invasion. Understand that in Argentina, an aggressive pro-national culture existed in post-World War II, with the election of President Juan Perón in 1946. Together with his wife Eva, they inspired their nation to become proud and nationalistic. The Perones became almost fanatical in their approach to governance, and by the mid-1950s they were removed in a coup d'etat. Yet this culture of strong nationalism survived and carried over throughout the multiple regime changes that plagued this country during the 50s, 60s, and 70s. A military junta seized control of the Argentine government in 1976 and tightened its grip on the people of Argentina by regulating nearly everything. An escalation in tensions between the junta and the people of Argentina led to organized revolts and the formation of groups whose sole purpose was to undermine the junta. The revolts often became violent, and an insurgency developed at the height of what is known to Argentines as the Dirty War. By the early 1980s, the junta realized that their situation was critical, and at least 1,500 lives had been taken as a result of the Dirty War. In December 1981, General Leopoldo Galtieri was appointed as the new leader of the junta and president of Argentina. His mission was to bring about change to Argentina by reunifying the government and its people, as the Perones had done so successfully. The reclamation of the Malvinas, or the Falklands, would be a perfect opportunity to restore nationalism through the defeat of an external opponent. The initial invasion of the Falklands occurred only a few months after his assumption of office. In the days and weeks following the initial invasion, the public rallied behind Galtieri and the junta, so his plan worked. His strategy was very successful, as a unified Argentina had now come together to defeat this Anglo Empire and retake the Malvinas once and for all. Within hours of the invasion, an amateur radio transmission was exchanged between the Falklands and Britain to alert London of the attack. After confirmation was received, Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher took to action in a draft of a military counterattack. On April 3, 1982, an emergency session of the British Parliament was held, during which time Prime Minister Thatcher announced the dispatch of a task force to the Falklands and subsequent launch of Operation Corporate. On April 5, 1982, only 72 hours after the initial invasion of the Falklands, the British task force was launched from Portsmouth Harbour. The task force was robust. It consisted of Britain's two premier aircraft carriers, the HMS Hermes and the HMS Invincible, 3 nuclear submarines, the HMS Spartan and the HMS Splendid, and the HMS Conqueror, and several frigates. A group of destroyers and missile cruisers, which were already en route, were reassigned from mid-Atlantic maneuvers to join the task force. A civilian fleet of approximately 50 ships followed the task force and included the hospital ship, the Uganda. It took the British task force 3 weeks to sail from the UK to the Falkland Islands, and they soon realized the logistical nightmare that an 8,000-mile distance would create. While the task force was en route, Britain's Prime Minister and the Parliament wasted no time in affirming Britain's position in the international community. Britain imposed sanctions upon Argentina and was backed by the European Economic Community, which was the predecessor to today's EU. The United Nations unofficially backed Britain in its counterattack, though no official consent was offered besides the passing of UN Resolution 502, which called for an immediate cessation of hostilities by both Argentina and Britain, though unofficially they supported Britain. Negotiation attempts were facilitated through the United States Secretary of State Haig of the Reagan administration, but were not productive, even in the least. Britain remained firm in its position that Argentina immediately withdraw and comply with the recently imposed exclusion zone. Prime Minister Thatcher's response to the invasion was swift and resolute in nature, as she remained unwavering in her convictions throughout this conflict of Argentina. The people of the UK rallied behind Prime Minister Thatcher, and much like Argentina, Britain had reclaimed its sense of nationalism as this former empire was once again in defense of its honor. Thanks for joining me today for the first segment of this series where I will review the book, A Brief Analysis. As you can see, we have a lot more to cover. In the next segment, I'll brief the land campaign, which will include the complex amphibious landings at San Carlos Water and the brutal air strafings conducted by Argentine A4 pilots on British vessels on the East Falkland. Thanks for watching. See you next time.